Sorry. Uh, sorry. No spoilers. Okay, here we are. So today's session is going to focus on researching potential employers and roles. And before I go into that, I want to remind you all about the resources that Beyond Barnard has available to you, even as an alum. So we provide advising and programming related to the job search process, career development, fellowships, and graduate and professional school. We also maintain relationships with employers and post jobs on Handshake, which is our platform that we use to do things like advertise events, house our resources for things like resumes, cover letters, and interviews. So if you are ever interested in looking for a job, you can look on Handshake. And finally, we share about the work that we do and are doing through our communications and operations team. So let's talk about our agenda today. We're going to start out with talking about the goals for the session. We're going to do a little catch up in small groups. We're going to talk about what we should research when we're talking about career research. We're going to touch on some things to keep in mind when it comes to researching. We're going to talk about some methods, which include social media, websites, and interpersonal and in real life type of research. Then we're going to talk about our next steps. We're going to close with the Q&A. But of course, if you ever have a question, you can feel free to utilize the chat. Don't feel like you have to hold on to it until, 12:45. You can put it in the chat. And then that's it. That's all we have. So like I said, throughout the time, you can feel free to ask questions in the chat. You can also raise your hand, unmute yourself. Feel free. All right, so let's talk about our goals for the session. Our goals for the session are to identify avenues for finding out more about prospective careers and employers, as well as learn what information you can discover from your research. So I want you to think of this presentation as kind of bringing you all some tools that can aid you as you begin your career transition. So if anybody has a toolbox, then you know that it comes with a bunch of tools and you're like, I don't know, like I got all my furniture from IKEA. All I need is an Allen wrench, right? I don't need these other things. But maybe one day you're going to buy something else and you're going to need something like a hammer or a wrench or something like that. So think about it like this. Some of these tools will be good for you right now. Some of these will be good for you forever. And some of these tools are going to be things that you'll need later. So you can be creative with these tools and use them as you see fit. Okay, so now we're going to pause the recording for a moment. All right. Oop, nope. We already did that. Okay. So let's move on. As we mentioned before, this presentation is meant to be a companion to the Assessing Your Interests presentation that my colleague Laura presented on July 7th. So if you weren't there in that workshop, we took some time to think about the values that are important to us related to work, the work environment, the kind of work that we want to do, and the relationship that we want to have with work. So now that we've had some time to do that and start thinking about that kind of stuff, we're going to talk a little bit about how you can find some potential careers. So we're ready to research, right? We're here, we're sitting in front of the computer, and just like this little graphic, it's a blank space, right? We don't know what we're going to look for. So before we get going with the research process, let's talk about some of the questions or concepts that you're interested in researching related to your career transition. As you're exploring careers or about to explore careers, what are some of the things that you're interested in researching? You can put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself. The things that you're interested in researching related to career exploration. Okay, salary. Yes, we're not out here volunteering. Yes, remote. We want to know if we got to put real pants on or not. Absolutely. I love that. Company culture. Yes, yes. If there's been a mass exodus recently, yes. Politics. Oh, yes. Hybrid, benefits, job title, stability. Yes, yes. These are all excellent. And these, the thing about these benefits, scope of work, a lot of these things are not the kind of things that you necessarily will see if you look at a job description, right? So we need to figure out how we can find out about things like opportunities for real mentorship and training. Perfect. I love these. Y'all are like ready. I am really energized by this. So here's a sample of some things that you might want to think about when you're thinking about research. The skills, the training, and the education / disposition needed for this position. Some trends in the industry. Is this a career that exists right now, but is not going to exist in a couple of years? We want to know the trends, right? Geographic location of positions. If you are, okay, so I'll give myself an example. I don't ever want to own a car. Like, I'm good. I don't need that. I'm not going to go anywhere where I have to have a car. Like, I'm not going to move to Texas. Like, I'm not interested in that. So I need to know if the jobs that I am interested in are also in the same locations that I'm interested in, right? So the growth and demand. It's great that you want to be, I don't know, what's a dying career? Something that's dying or something that's going. Maybe you want to be an AOL. You were really good at AOL and you wanted to work for AOL. Well, AOL doesn't exist anymore, right? So we want to make sure that the careers that you're interested in have a good demand outlook. Salary range, as we talked about. The career ladder. What does it take to move up? And then the lifestyle and the day-to-day reality. Again, these are things that you might not readily be able to see if you're just Googling. So as we're doing this research, here are some things we want to keep in mind. We want to keep an open mind, right? You never know where your inspiration is going to come from. You never know what conversation is going to unlock something for you or what career path might unlock something when you start doing your research. So keep an open mind, but also be realistic, right? Again, if I know that I don't want a car, I'm not moving to Texas, right? That's realistic for me. I'm not doing it. So be realistic. Use verified sources. You want to make sure that you're not just getting information from any old source. You're using vetted information and vetted sources. And take some time to reflect on your process. So that could be writing in a journal, keeping a journal, or a blog, or talking with other friends or other people that are also in a transition or people that are not in a transition. Make sure that you're taking some time to reflect on your process. So when we're talking about research, the first thing that we want to talk about is some online resources for career exploration. First up is the Occupational Outlook Handbook. This website is kind of like a career clearinghouse. The Bureau of Labor Statistics uses the information it receives from various different sources to publish information about basically any career that you can think of. Any career in the United States, they have some kind of data on it, some kind of statistics, research. It's all in here, okay? So you can search the website. You can use this website to search by you can use this website to search by tons of different data points. So some of the things that we've talked about: salary range. If you have to go back to school, do you have, the schooling and training that you need? What kind of job hazards are there? If you're afraid of heights, for example, you might not want to do a job that requires you to be in high places. So the Occupational Outlook Handbook actually has information about stuff like this, because like I said, they're collecting data from all kinds of different resources. So, and it's also not biased because it is, it's the government that is collecting all this data. So some things that you can search by are occupation. So if you already know the name of the occupation or occupations that you might be interested in, you can search by the name. You can search by projected employment growth. So if you're like, listen, I'm in it for the long haul, I need something that's going to be good for the next 15, 20 years, you can search by that. You can search by wages. We all have a lifestyle that we want to maintain or achieve, so we can search by wages. We can search by typical entry-level education and then training needed. So you can see, is this going to be feasible for me if I don't want to go back to school? Do I have the education already that I can make a transition into this career? Or do I need to think about going back to school or getting some other kind of training? You can also search by research, typical job duties, specialties within the occupation, state and area. Again, we want to talk about where these jobs are popular, in which states, and then similar occupations. So let's say you're interested in, you like education, but maybe you don't want to be a teacher anymore. You might want to stay in education. So you can click on education and see what kind of jobs are available in that area. So that's another way that you can use this site. There's also ONET Online, which is kind of a sister site to Occupational Outlook Handbook. It actually uses information from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, like the Occupational Outlook Handbook. It's a bit more friendly to people that are early in their career search phase. There are things like career assessments that you can take. You can search by tasks and duties, your own abilities. You can search by career clusters, like in the Occupational Outlook Handbook. And if you know the industry that you want to go into, but if you're not sure, there are things that you can search by with that as well. So here's kind of a breakdown of just the first page. So we see like there's tons that you can do even before you've even clicked anything. There are all kinds of things that you can do. So if you're a veteran, they have like places for veterans. They have a lot of different things that you can search by on this page. You can spend like days just on this website, just researching careers. So now let's talk about Glassdoor. Once you identify the companies that you want to work for, you can get a good understanding of how employees feel about the company and the kinds of positions that exist in the company by using Glassdoor. Glassdoor is a really great resource for career exploration, but it really shines when it comes to interview prep. You can learn more about the company's interview process, salary ranges, and much, much more. So if you make an account, it's like a free account. You can click around, you can read employee reviews, you can read about what kinds of questions they ask for specific interviews, salary ranges. It's really a wonderful resource. So next, I want to talk about using social media for your career exploration. Of course, first up is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is pretty wonderful when it comes to career services. It's kind of like career exploration. It's kind of like the go-to. When people think about career stuff, professional stuff, and they think about like online resources, they think about LinkedIn, and for good reason, right? You can connect to people that work in companies that you want to work in jobs that you want to work in industries that you want to work in. There's a lot of different ways that you can connect with folks. You can follow companies, so you can find out when new positions are open. You can find out news, which is helpful for not only understanding what the company culture is, but it's something that you can talk about during your interviews once you get those interviews. You can join groups that are based on either affinity situations, organizations, job support, things like that. You can discover interesting events. You can discover different classes that different places are offering. It's a really great resource. And we also have a video. If you're not too great with LinkedIn, we have a video about how you can beef up your LinkedIn presence and use LinkedIn in the job search and in the career exploration world. Next up, we have to plug our dear beloved Barnard Connect. Barnard Connect is kind of like LinkedIn in terms of like being a career website, a career focused social media website. You can use it to network with other Barnard alumni. It is for Barnard folks. It's for the Barnard community. So there are people that work at Barnard, like me. I have I have an account, even though I did not go to Barnard, but I work at Barnard, so I have one. And you can network with current students that are looking for mentors, and you can network with other alumni who are looking for community and mentorships. You can share your knowledge with the Barnard community. So maybe you want to tell folks like, listen, here are some pitfalls that you might come across if you're interested in this industry. It's a really great way to exchange information, and the URL is there. Also, once you fill out the little informational form, if you don't know about what Barnard Connect is, there's a link that you can click on that will take you to how to set up a page. But I highly recommend it. It's a really good resource for the Barnard community to kind of keep in touch with each other. So we know that LinkedIn is a heavy hitter, and obviously Barnard Connect, which kind of interfaces with LinkedIn, but it's not the only social media that you can use with your exploration. So YouTube is also a really great tool. If you're a visual learner like me, it can be helpful to see how some of the things that you've been researching are actually done in real life, right? You can use YouTube to look up things like day in the life videos. So if you're interested in maybe transitioning to be a software engineer, you might just go into YouTube and put in, day in the life of a software engineer. And people actually tell you like what their life is like. And you can look at a lot of different examples. So it might be like, if you want to see how a woman is doing it, or a younger person, or an older person, or whoever. YouTube is a really great resource for finding lots of different people doing the kinds of things that you might want to do. YouTube is also great for learning new skills. I know for myself, every time I have a question about Excel, I can go to YouTube and just put in pivot tables, how to sort, how to do whatever I need to do, how to use functions, whatever. YouTube is really great for that. And it's a great way for you to beef up the skills that you have and learn new skills for a potential career change. And then, of course, I have to plug our own Beyond Barnard channel that we have, where we have recorded all of our events. We have career insight panels. So if you're thinking about a career change and want to hear about how folks are talking about their career, any of those videos are a good idea. But we also have information about the nuts and bolts of the career type stuff. So resume, cover letter, interview, LinkedIn, how to do an informational meeting. If you're thinking about going to graduate school, there's videos about that. We have a ton of great content available on our YouTube channel. So you can feel free to check that out as you are starting your career exploration. So Twitter is the next platform that I want to talk about. It's not just a great place to live tweet Drag Race like I do. It's also a really good way to learn about people in the industry, about trends, about what's going on. A lot of times companies will tweet about things. It's a good way to understand what the company culture might be. They might talk about things that they care about, causes. In some of these affinity months, if you care about being in a workplace that, say, cares about LGBTQ issues, you might go back to June and see what they tweeted. Were they tweeting about things that you care about? Whatever thing that you care about, whatever cause, or if there's even like you want to know about policies or whatever, a lot of times they're tweeting about it. This can also be very helpful when you are researching for a job interview, because you are going to want to talk about what's going on currently. So Twitter is great for that. You can also find out about events. You can discover open positions. I see all the time people just tweet, a regular person being like, hey, there's a position at my place open, here's a salary range, here's a link to the to the job. It's a great way to find out what's going on in the industry that you care about. You can follow industry leaders, you can interact with folks, you can kind of like do as much or as little as you want on Twitter, depending on your level of comfort and your level of, wanting to interact with folks and with companies. So Twitter is a really great place for career exploration. So Instagram can be another great platform. Like Twitter, you can follow companies, industry leaders, and folks who work at companies that you're interested in. What's cool about Instagram is that you can get a better understanding of what certain places look like beyond their websites. So you can look through the pictures. Does this place look like a place that you might want to work? Vibes wise, like, are the vibes vibing with your vibes? Sometimes you can't get that from a website or a job description or something like that. Sometimes you need to see the pictures. If you're interested in, let's say, a diverse workplace, is that represented in the pictures? Are you just seeing the same brown person in every picture? Or are you seeing different people? These are things that you can explore on Instagram that you might not be able to explore elsewhere. Are companies posting about the causes that you care about? Again, this is like Twitter. This is a good place to see these things. You can interact with people in the comments, you can follow folks, you can tag pictures, strategically, don't spam. You can do things to raise your profile. And Instagram is especially good for careers that are more visual. So thinking about journalism, thinking about design, things like that, where you can share your art with the world and visual aspects of yourself, and also see other things like aesthetics, trends, what's going on in this industry that you're interested in. So Instagram is another great tool for you. So next we're going to talk about researching employers and roles using interpersonal and in real life methods. So first, let's talk about how you can do some research on your own. Reading books, blogs, and articles is super helpful for you to learn about industries, learn skills, and understand the historical context for some careers, right? So we see that it's kind of limited. Of course, there are more things that you can do. You can use the tools that we talked about, but at a certain point, you need to be able to break free and go to doing career research in a smaller group or a smaller group setting. So some ways that you can do that is, first of all, utilize Beyond Barnard's resources. So that means one-on-one appointments with an advisor, watching videos, using our resources that are on Handshake, attending events that are open to alumni. Those are all available to you basically forever. So definitely take advantage of those. If you're able to do job shadowing, whether it's virtual or in real life, that's another way to understand what people do on a day-to-day basis. Obviously, I understand that things are difficult for a lot of reasons, the pandemic mainly one of them, but also you might have your own job that you need to do or other resources. So trying to figure out how you can flexibly do that would be helpful. Another thing is informal chats. So everyone in your life should know that you are interested in a career transition. Everyone that you have a relationship with should know that, because you never know what kind of advice they might be able to give or what kind of connections they might be able to help you with. So even if you think it's like, who does my hairdresser know? Or who does my babysitter know? Or you never know. They might be connected to some powerful folks or have some good advice for you. So don't be afraid to reach out to people, or, in your informal chats, just drop that you're thinking about doing a career change. Next is informational interviews. These can be super helpful for you to not only gain information about careers, but also help people to think about you when they hear about career opportunities. So let's talk a little bit more about informational interviewing. These interviews are driven by you, okay? So don't just show up and be like, what questions do you have for me? No. That's how your interviewee should be showing up. You should show up with a few questions that are well researched, that they can answer for you. And these questions are not things that you can easily find on the internet or LinkedIn. So if you sit down and you're like, so what was your major at Barnard? They're going to be like, but you found me on LinkedIn. Like, you could have scrolled all the way down and seen that I, majored in whatever. So you're going to want to ask some questions that are not easily found on the internet, because you want this time to, you want to maximize this time. You want to make sure that you are discovering things that only this person can tell you, or only an insider can tell you. So here are some, or before we get to that, make sure that you're asking about if they can connect you with other folks, or if there's other people that you should be reaching out to. And then remember to send a thank you note, because everybody has limited time. So you want to just say a quick thank you. And that's a good way to also say, like, let's keep in touch. And then you keep in touch every, 6 months or whatever. When you have an update, you can just let them know, hey, just want to let you know, thank you for your advice. I got the job and blah, blah, blah. I want to keep in touch, whatever. It's a really good way to grow your network. And who knows, they might also want you to help them with a career transition. So you never know. So here are some questions that you can ask during an informational interview. And I've kind of broken them down into these 3 categories, but there are a lot of different things that we can talk about. So you might want to ask, how do most people get into this career field, especially if it's not necessarily apparent? How does your position fit in within the organization/career/field/industry? This is a good way to understand how things are structured and how viable the career path is. And, if you enter, are you going to be able to have a long future in the career? Has this person maxed out in their career, but they're only, 25? And so, they're also probably going to be like, these are things that you can ask about in your informational interviews related to career path. You might also want to ask about professional experiences. What do you like best or least about your work? This is a time for them to be candid and let you know, like, here are the things that I do not like. You're not going to be able to find that on a website. And obviously, the things that people like and dislike are going to be different for everybody, but who knows? Maybe that's something that you also dislike or that you also like. So that could be valuable. What does a typical day look like for you? That can be very good for you to understand what the reality is, because we all have kind of an idea about what certain jobs are, but if you talk to a lawyer, they might tell you that most of my time is doing paperwork, or, some other job where you think that it's one thing, but it's actually like, no, all I do all day is paperwork. So, these are good questions to ask. You might want to ask about what some current issues in the field that you should be aware of. So again, maybe it's we're downsizing, right? So Meta came out the other day and was like, we're cutting all these positions and things like that. We're having a hiring freeze. These are things that you're going to want to know, because maybe you don't want to get into an industry that might be shutting its door, or a company that might be shutting its doors in a few, or maybe it's a situation where they might be looking for a certain kind of person. So they might say, we're actually looking for people that have a background in this certain skill. So if you have that skill, then that's something that you're going to want to talk about in your cover letter or in your resume, so that they know that, there's a good match there. Another thing is, again, salary. Again, none of us are volunteering. We all have bills to pay. So you might want to ask something like, I've read that the entry-level salary range for this field is usually around blank. Does this jive with what you've seen? Don't ever ask someone unless you like really, unless it's like your sister or something like that. Don't ask them like what they make. But it is okay to ask about a range, especially for entry-level positions. then you can kind of get to know, like, is this worth it for me? One other thing that I want to talk about, or one other thing that you can ask about that's not here, is asking specifically where you can find jobs in this industry. So every industry, or most industries, I should say, have specific job boards where they post jobs. So I'm in the higher education industry. I'm a higher education administrator. We have a website just for jobs related to our industry called higheredjobs.com. Super creative, I know, right? But when people ask me about where they should look for a job, that's not the first thing that they think about. They're not thinking about like, oh, there's an aggregator, whatever. So definitely talk to folks about where they can find jobs in their industry, because there are industry specific job boards. So finally, let's talk about research that you can do in a larger group. So we have, of course, volunteering. This is volunteering and taking a class are really great ways for you to not only do the things that you're interested in and be in an environment with other folks that are doing things that you're interested in. It's also a great way to network. So take a chance if you are able to volunteer or take a class. That's a really great way to be in an area around folks that are interested in the things that you are interested in. You can learn about the things in this career field that you're interested in. And you can kind of get the word out that maybe you might want to join this area. So those are really great places. Finally, you can join a professional organization related to your interests. So this might be another question that you would ask about in your informational interview. What are some organizations that I should be aware of and that I should join? So those are kind of some of the some of the ways that you can do some in real life research. But I want to kind of kick it to you all. Are there things that we didn't cover in the presentation, other places that people should be thinking about when it comes to research? Or did I cover everything?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Jody. Hi, everyone.
Hi,
Oh,
Free.
thank you. I was taking lots of notes between the presentation and the chat, so it's very helpful. I know one thing, in case, sorry if I missed it, we want to think about the work life and what are the busy seasons, because in case that's really important to you, don't feel bad or guilty about it. So if there's certain times of the year you have to work, let's say late or super early, it's good to know that beforehand, just so you can still, manage your personal time. So maybe that's a great question to ask in the informational interview. And even if you have an actual interview with a job, to ask, what are the busy seasons? Because I know that sometimes people leave a job, not because like the job is horrible or the work is boring, but sometimes they leave because it's just really, the hours don't match up with all the stuff that they have to manage in their life. And then you lose really good talent, and it's really hard to find a good replacement. So that's something to consider. Thank you.
Free, that is an excellent point, because, as a higher ed administrator, I can't tell you how many times that I've had to tell my family that, no, I do not have the summer off. Right. And not in this role as much, but in one of my last roles, the summer was actually the busy time for me. Like June 1st to, mid-August, I was working hard. And I don't have kids, but I could imagine that if I had kids, it would be very difficult, because that's my busy time and that's their downtime. And I'm supposed to be, that's when they're on vacation and things like that. So asking people about when is the busy season? What is the busy season? What can I expect during the busy season? Those are excellent questions. Yes. Thank you, Free. Anyone else want to chime in? Anything from the chat, Laura?
We just have some great recommendations from the community for industry specific job boards. So thank you everyone who's sharing the inside scoop.
Yes, so folks, make sure, and maybe this is something that we can include in our follow-up email as some of these suggestions. Thank you all. All right, so let's move forward. We're almost done. Oh, Jill, sorry, I didn't see you. Go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
I've been living in a way where I have a couple of careers going on at the same time. And now that I'm searching for something new, I'm concerned that part-time people who are serious about their work, but only want to do it part-time because they've got something else going. If there are any tips on how to kind of convey, well, one, find those roles. I guess it's just about doing all these other things that you've mentioned, but also if there's any advice on kind of conveying, like, I'm serious, I'm committed, but I am looking for something that is not full-time. Yeah, any advice on that would be great.
Yeah, so that's something that can be helpful when you're doing your networking. That's something that you can talk about because a lot of people are doing a lot of different things now. The world of work is a lot more malleable than it has been in the past. So it's not unusual for folks to want part-time work. So you can use things like your cover letter also to talk about that. So you can say something like, I'm a dedicated person. I'm really interested in this field. I've done all this preparation to enter this field. You can do things like signal that you are interested in a long-term situation in things like the cover letter, in things like your formal interview when you have it. You can ask a question about, like, you can frame it like, well, I'm interested in doing something like this for the long term. Is this more of a long-term situation or a casual situation? Something like that. So you can definitely ask kind of directly, but also signal in other ways that you are dedicated. And this is not just like, a gig economy kind of situation for you. Like, this is something that you actually want to do and you're doing it part-time. You happen to be doing it part-time.
I agree, and I wanted to just add on to that. There is a job board called flexjobs.com that has opportunities that are considered non-traditional employment, although I think that the definition of that has changed in the last few years anyway. But it's part-time, temporary contract roles, non-traditional working hours. So check it out. Just a little asterisk that you can view all the jobs on the job board for free, and then I think if you want to actually apply to them, it's like a monthly subscription. I want to say it's like maybe like $8.99 a month or something like that. But that is a good job board where you may be able to find some of those more like non-traditional opportunities.
All right. Anything else? I guess we can kind of skip to the Q&A now.
Yeah. Oh, Anna, you are correct. Apologies. We meant to update that. The next session is August 2nd, not July 26th. So we will, thank you for noticing that, and we will update that before we send you all copies of the slides.
Yes, sorry about that.
I think I did the same thing last week. We had pushed the sessions back a week, so good catch.
All right. So we're going to just wrap up quickly. So the next steps are going to be to create your plan of action so that you know how you're going to move forward, and begin doing your research in a multifaceted approach. So use a couple of these tools that we've talked about. Make sure that you're integrating some in real life tools along with your virtual or in real life. Like, obviously, like, everything's on Zoom these days, so pretend that that's real life. In real life and virtual tools. And then, of course, attending our third session, which is reshaping your resumes, cover letters, and interview stories, which is going to be on August 2nd. We hope to see everybody there. Of course, we have advising appointments available if you feel like you need a little bit more face time to talk about things. These are always available to you, even beyond the summer. This is something that a resource that you always will have access to, so feel free. If you haven't made an appointment yet, you can use Handshake. This is the URL, barnard.joinhandshake.com. If you have any trouble with that, you can email Beyond Barnard. And if you really, really are having trouble, you can call and make an appointment. Again, we have our events and then our online resources that I've plugged throughout. If you ever forget, you can just Google Beyond Barnard YouTube. That's where all of our events are housed. They're really great. I've watched them. I'm even in some of them and Laura's in some of them. So if you miss our faces in between now and our next appointment or our next event, you can feel free to watch. And that's it. So any other questions before we wrap up? And we can stop recording, I think.